push my way through the crowd. Faces face me, stare me down. I dare you, cause I want you. I was looking back to see if you were too, to see if I was looking back at you. Say, I know, you know I want that. You know, I know you want it right back. Aren't you tired of overthinking?
Hey guys, welcome back to my channel and thanks for watching this tutorial. Today we will be folding my sword and shield design that I made in 2016. Now it's based off of the figura Humana designed by Claudio Acuna J. So I can't take 100% credit for this design as it's basically his model plus the shield and sword that I attached. Now, this model is pretty simple to make, and the materials that we're going to use for the tutorial are pretty easy to get. Nothing fancy, no MC. My goal for this is that you guys will be able to just have everything for this model at your house, or at least have it really accessible and cheap to get. Alright, so what exactly do we need? First off, we're going to be using just a regular sheet of A4 paper. Then we're going to need a paintbrush that's pretty small, just a disposable cup or just any cup that you don't care about too much, some white glue. I know this differs from country to country, but whatever white glue, just general craft glue you can get your hands on will work. And then you're going to need some wire. We're going to need this for shaping. You can pretty much use any kind of wire. There's no special type of wire. As long as you can bend it pretty easily and it's not too thin, it'll work. And then we just need something to cut the wire. Now, if you don't have pliers, scissors work to cut the wire as well. It's just a little harder. So just make sure you're safe. But other than that, that's all we need for this entire model. As you can see, I painted this model. I'll go over that later. Painting's kind of optional, so if you have paint, that's good. If you don't have paint, it's not going to stop you from making it. But yeah, so now let's get started. Alright, so first we're just going to turn this A4 paper into a square. And now you guys probably know how to do this, but if you don't, basically you're just going to fold diagonally like I am doing, like this. And then you're going to fold this extra part opposite, like this. And you're just going to make sure you're pretty precise on the corners. We don't want to make our square, too imprecise, but kind of get that. And you can crease it a little bit harder if you'd like. And basically, once you're ready, you're going to just tear off this extra bit right here. If you want, you can use scissors, but I find that this is a little bit easier to get a straight line. I can't cut a straight line very well, so this works for me. Alright, and that is our square. Now some of you guys might be wondering, oh, can I use origami paper or kami? You could. It's a little bit weaker than A4 paper, so I recommend using the A4 paper. But yeah, let's continue. Alright, now that we have our square, we're just going to want to fold the other diagonal. This is going to help us with some of the folds. Not quite all of them, but it'll just give us a center point, like this. And open it back up. And we're also going to fold the middles horizontal lines like this. Just make sure you're precise. Alright, and we're going to get the other one like this. Perfect. Alright, you're going to unfold. And I guess the most challenging part of this model is going to come next. And what we're going to do is we're going to fold a 32 by 32 grid into this piece of paper. I know some of you guys might be wondering, oh, Boice, why are you using a 32 grid? Could you do it with less? I agree. 32 grid is quite a large grid, and the design is very inefficient. But keep in mind that I designed this a few years ago. I had no idea, really, the good design practice, but it works out, and I haven't really changed the model to be more efficient, so we're just gonna have to make a 32 by 32 grid. It's not too hard, especially with printed paper. It's pretty easy. So I'm gonna show that. I'm not gonna really show how to fold the grid. I'm just gonna time lapse it. But if you guys aren't sure how to fold a grid properly, I have a video tutorial on how to get an accordion grid. And yeah, so get your 32 grid ready. You can watch the time lapse, and we'll be back once that's done. Alright, see you guys. 10 minutes for a 32 by 32 grid. Not too bad. Alright, we're ready to get started now. Alright guys, so we have our 32 by 32 grid. I have some creases on here I kind of messed up, so just ignore those. But we are going to start off by finding the middle point, which is right here. And we're just going to follow that down and count up by 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And we're just going to fold the diagonals down this way and this way. Now I'm marking it out with pencil so it's a little easier to see, but you guys don't have to draw it or anything. And we're actually just going to continue that all the way to the top. I'm not going to draw that, I'm just going to crease it. So once we know where that is, I'm just going to go ahead and crease it like this. Like that all the way up. And you're going to do the same thing on the other side over here. Awesome. Alright, now what we're going to do is we're just going to collapse around these lines, and basically what's going to happen is we're going to first get it just up to here, this 8x8 box, and you'll see it's going to look kind of like the Humana Figueroa once we do this. So go ahead, start from the bottom and just trace this X that we have formed by our creases, like this. And it shouldn't take too long. Alright. Like that. And this will just be like a standard box pleat collapse, so nothing too difficult here. Nothing weird going on. Alright. Right, so it's just going to be a mountain valley pattern all the way down, like this, until you get to the final square. Awesome. And then once we're here, we're just going to collapse this in like this and kind of just crease it down like this so we know that it's steady. Alright, and then if you know how to fold the human Figueroa, you're going to remember this part. But basically, we're going to open up towards the top, these layers, and you're just going to imagine these horizontals right here. And what you actually want to do is implement kind of a diagonal lines like that. And how you're going to do that is I like to put my index finger underneath the layer and just kind of bend it down while holding the crease like that. It's pretty simple. And once that's creased down, it forms this motion. If you want to go ahead and like crease it beforehand, you can do that, but you really don't need to. It's pretty easy. And we're going to do the same thing on the other side. Right? So I'm just going to hold like this and just crease down like that. There you go. And once we have that side, last step is we're basically making 2 valley folds underneath here, like that. And we're just going to collapse up to there and kind of do the same thing. Just push the head into those valley creases, those valley folds, and that's going to be our face. And that's basically the Humana Figueroa, according to that design. But we're going to continue on. So you see we have all this extra paper here. And basically what you're going to do here is you're just going to keep collapsing along these lines and eventually just accordion fold. So I'll show you how to do that. It's pretty simple. You just keep mountain valleying all the way up. I'll show a couple and then I'm just going to fast forward the rest of it till it's done. Just because I think this is a pretty easy step for you guys. Shouldn't be that difficult. So you just kind of trace the body with these mountain valleys. Okay, like that. You just keep going. We'll do one more. And if you fold it the accordion fold, basically, it's just going to follow all these creases. Like this. Alright, so I'm going to do the rest. You guys finish that up too. And I'll show you guys when it's done. But yeah, I'm going to time-lapse this part a little bit. Should be pretty straightforward. But yeah. Alright guys, we are back. And we've collapsed everything, so you can kind of see it's all opened like this. And if you have this, you should be doing it correctly. Now before we continue, we're just going to squeeze the arms in just to make sure they match up with the head. Basically the face, since it's just one layer, it's the weakest point of the model. So we just want to reinforce this section by just making sure the rest of the layers are creased like this. Just hold it like that. Right, and do the same thing on the other side. This is just some preemptive measures to make sure it's all protected. Alright, like that. And if it has the gist of it, it'll be fine. Later on, we're going to be using the glue, and it'll make it a lot stronger. So don't worry about it too much. Alright, next what we're going to do is we're just going to do one last creasing, and it's going to be on this side. So we're just going to unfold this a little bit, and you want to count up, see where this V is? Right at this point, you want to count up 5 diagonal lines. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then after you do that, you want to count up 3 grid units. 1, 2, 3. And once we're here, we're just going to create creases. It's just going to be a diamond, a 2x2 diamond like this. And you're just going to want to mountain fold these like that. So pretty easy. Let's mountain fold them. Alright. And this is basically how we're going to get the sword. So once that's all done, we're going to collapse up the top layers here. And this line in the middle, we're going to want to mountain fold that. And then these other two on the side, we're going to valley fold. So basically, as we're collapsing this back up, we're just going to want this middle line to become a mountain fold, like that. You guys see that? And what that's going to do is it's going to cause this top section to kind of bend around, like this. And you'll see it to start form a point like this. Kind of like that. And then the next spots are going to be valleys, and the diagonals will be mountains. So just fold that next layer in like this. And if you guys haven't heard of the term Elias stretch, that's basically what this is. It's a 2x2 Elias stretch. Alright, see? Like that. And like this. I'll show in better detail in a little bit. Yeah, basically this is going to be a mountain. These are valleys. Let me mark these. Those are valleys. And then these outer diagonals are mountains. And if you follow that, it'll kind of look like this. And when you collapse it up, you'll notice it's pushing out another layer on the bottom. So collapse this whole arm section back up like this. Right. Everything except for this diamond. And you'll see it push in like this. Right. So I'm going to show that a little closer up. Let's see. I'm just going to adjust the focus. So it looks like, you see that? I have this arm creased up. Mountain, 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 valley, valley, mountain. Alright guys, so just make sure you have this part creased down, and we'll be good to go for later dates. We're going to come back to the sword later. Alright, now we're going to work on the second side. Alright, and what we're going to do here is we're going to go to the very edge and kind of stretch it all out. And what we're going to want to do is we're actually going to form this corner into a point like that. See what I'm doing? And we're just going to fold this layer behind. And it's going to form a little point on the top like this. Right? So we have basically a mountain fold right here and a valley fold right here with both these corner flaps folded down. And it's going to be like that. And on the bottom side, we're going to keep this part collapsed in. So as you can see, I'm just holding right here. And you'll see that it kind of just makes a bottom corner like that. Alright, now that we have that, we are going to unfold this really quick so that we can do the same but opposite thing over here. So what we're going to do is after two spaces, there's going to be a valley fold right there and a mountain fold like that. So you guys can see like that. And we're going to do this mountain fold first. Right? And if we do both of them here like this, it's going to form another point. And we're going to need just the mountain fold here on the other side to get it all together. And before we collapse all that up, I'm going to go to the bottom. Now the bottom is also going to fold in. So right at this point here. Sorry, I'm not being super technical, but I don't want to use a bunch of like origami jargon that might confuse some of you. But basically, right at this, just 4 units over, we're just going to mountain fold all of that down like this. Right, and this is going to be our shield. Awesome. And once we have that, we're just going to collapse this arm part in. So it's basically going to happen, we don't have to crease this, but I'm going to draw it out for you guys, is there's going to be a sequence of diagonal collapse, just like what we did to make the arms in the first place, and it's going to follow these creases like that, and just become the accordion. So what you'll notice is this part's going to collapse in like that, and the next part is going to do the same, like this. Same thing on this side. You're going to mountain fold that, and this part's going to collapse in, and again, and then this very last part right here finally closes up, and boom, we have our shield. That wasn't too hard. One more time, I'm just going to open that up so you guys can see. Alright, don't worry about it staying yet. We're going to fix that later. Alright, and now we're just going to kind of close this section up back again just to make sure we still got it. There we go. Alright, so now on to the sword. So the sword, what we're going to do is similar to the shield. We're going to turn this section into a point. So we're just going to fold here and get that little point there, and on this side fold a point up to there. So I'll show that to you guys just like that, and it's going to do that same collapsing motion we did earlier, so just like this. Again, you don't have to draw it out, but this is where the creases are going to go, just like that. So collapse that up, right? Pretty simple, none scary. Alright, and it'll close up like that. Great. Now we have our model like this. Make sure these stay in. And what we're going to do is do the sword technique from the Swordsman by Tan Trung Huang, I believe. Or yeah, Tran Chung Tan. I've mentioned him in my samurai videos before. But basically we're going to take this flap and the sword, and we're just going to twist it up like that. Boom, like that. Alright. Once we have that, we are going to basically have our sword. You can see that this kind of forms the hand, connecting the arm, like that, and we have our sword like this. And then what we're going to do is we're just going to take the two sides of our sword, like this, and you're just going to press it flat like this. So basically there will be like one half here, one here, and then the last part here. You're just going to want to push it like this. and then fold just a small diagonal there. Alright, so one last time with the sword. Basically right along this third point right here, this third grid mark, we're going to make a diagonal mountain fold. And same thing on the other side, just the opposite direction. And now these are just kind of for shaping purposes, and it kind of helps us turn out the sword. Obviously it's not going to crease all the way down, but we just want some texture in the sword to get it to stand up. It's going to look like this. And the bottom part, we're just going to leave that as is. Alright, so basically we have our full collapse now. You know, that wasn't too bad, I don't think. But yeah, now we're going to kind of get onto shaping. I'll show you how that goes. But yeah, great job for making it this far. And we're just going to leave this guy like this for now. And I'll show you what to do next. Alright guys, so what we want for the next part is I'm going to show you how to make this glue and water mixture. You might want to get yourself like a paper towel, just in case you spill a little bit. And then some kind of stirring tool. You could use like a spoon. I'm going to just use some chopsticks. Alright, so we got our white glue here. And I don't know if you can tell, but I just have a little bit of water in here. I don't have too much, but I don't think we're going to need a whole lot. Just a little bit of water, and basically we just want to pour in some glue. Actually, I'm just going to use most of the... Alright, I'm just going to pour it in like this. And, right, we're kind of just watering down the glue, so you don't want too much. I think that should be pretty good. Close this back up. Right, so I don't have too much of a ratio, but there's like a fair amount of glue in the water. And we're just going to want to mix it up till it's pretty much all there. So it's still going to be pretty watery. Alright, let's put this again to the side, let it dry off. Put the glue away. Alright, so once we have our mixture, the first thing we want to kind of glue down is this top part. And actually, we're going to want to use some of the glue for this part. So there's a couple ways to do this. What I'm going to show you is to kind of strengthen it. Is first on the opposite side of the face, we're just going to put regular glue, not our water glue mixture, down. So I'm just put a little bit on my brush, and basically when this kind of soaks into the paper, it's just going to strengthen the paper a little bit. We're not really gluing anything to it. Just get the sides and the angle a little bit like that. And then now what we're going to do is on this back side, we're going to use our mixture, and we're kind of just going to coat between each layer right above the head. And what that's going to do is it's going to help bond each layer together and make it strong so we don't get it too loose. Now you don't want to quite drench the whole thing, but just get a little bit between each layer. It's mostly water, so it's also going to help us squish the whole thing down. Right. I'm going to try not to miss any of the layers. I might have missed some. But yeah, just try to get all the layers down. Move this to this side. Alright. So once we do that, I'm going to be able to close this down. Now just be careful, it's going to weaken the paper a little bit. You're just going to want to press down on this one spot like this, and you see I'm just gently kind of holding more of the edge of that paper, not really the actual wet spot itself. And you want to just kind of hold this in place just maybe for like 20 seconds so it can start bonding together. Every now and then as this part dries, you just want to squeeze it just to make sure it's stuck together. But otherwise we don't want to bother it too much. And as we go on, it's kind of gonna come apart, but we'll fix it back again later. Alright, we're gonna flip to the front, and we're going to get our wire ready. Now our wire, we're gonna use this kind of secure just around the head and part of the arms. So what you want to do, you're gonna want to cut about this much wire, like this, and we're going to start this around the body. So not too much. Right, and you just want to be very careful of this top part with the head. Right. Normally I'd let this dry a little bit more before I start doing this, but kind of showing this live. So this neck portion, what we're going to do is we're just going to start our wire, and we're going to tie it around this body section like this. Alright, and we want it to be fairly tight, but you also want to kind of leave some gaps in between. See how it's not fully around? It's like some parts tight, some parts open. That way when we put our mixture in, it's going to let it kind of soak into the middle portions. Right. And what I'm going to do here, I'm just going to fix our head a little bit. You'll notice that it's kind of squished in there, so I don't want it to dry like that, so I'm just gonna kind of fix it a little bit like this. Alright, and we're good to go. Cool, just like that. Squeeze the top a little bit just to get it to dry. Great. All right. Cool. Now what we're going to do is we can actually use this part since we have a little bit extra for the leg. What I'm going to do first with the leg though is I'm going to fold this layer in half up till the edge. So basically I'm just going to take my fingernail, stick it in the middle here, and use it to kind of bend around our leg. And it's basically just going to kind of ghost crease the leg like this. That way when we squeeze it together, it'll form our actual leg, kind of like this. Alright, so see how it's kind of folded in half like this. And from here, we kind of want a knee joint, right? So right about where you kind of see fit for a knee, we're just going to open up a little bit and kind of bend like this. And then try to reclose our paper, and it'll make kind of a joint. Kind of see like that? Right? If you need to shift it a little higher, you can. Shift mine a little bit higher. Alright. And then for the foot, basically all we're going to do is we're going to take this last layer and just flip it one grid unit up like this and kind of squish it into our leg. Round it out. See how I'm going to push my nail just into the grid just like that. And that's basically how we get our leg, like that. And you're going to do that on the opposite side. So once again, ghost crease that half point, like this. Squeeze it, so it makes a half. You'll notice kind of this as you get closer to the middle. It's some of these layers are going to kind of pop out. That's okay. Technically we want the thigh a little bit thicker than the lower section of our model. So if it spreads out a little bit, that's perfect. All right, we're going to get our knee joint right here. Squeeze, just like that. Right, and then we're going to make our foot just by using this bottom grid unit, folding up, and then pushing our nail right into the middle, kind of get that foot shape. Alright, so pretty easily like that. And then, like I said before, we can use this wire to tie around our leg like this. And this is just going to solidify our leg. As you can see, I'm not wrapping it all the way. I'm just basically wrapping it into position that I want it to be in, so it'll stay there when we use our water mixture, like that. And with the wire, it's really easy to get the proper bend that you want. So if you want it in a certain pose, you can kind of put it in that pose before you apply our water glue mixture. And again, I'm just gonna maintain the head a little bit. Just so we don't lose too much of the accuracy. Alright. If you have clips, you can clip this down. That makes it easier for you. Since some people don't have clips, I'll show you. It'll be fine without the clips. You just have to make sure you're maintaining it. Alright, so we're going to wrap up the second leg here. And we'll continue on. So this one doesn't need a whole lot of wire. I used a little bit less than I used last time, just because we have to wrap up less. Right, so I'm going to start just around the leg. And the benefit of using printer paper for this model is that this wire won't bite into the printer paper like it'll bite into other origami papers, just because printer paper is pretty durable. So it holds its own against moisture and wire. If you wrap it too tight, you'll get some wire bite, but if you paint over it, it kind of goes away. Alright, so again, reshape the leg just so it's in the pose we want. This is kind of the leg positioning we're going for. Right. If I'm going to kind of squish down right near the center just to get a little bit wider. It's like a kind of like a thigh. It's kind of like that. If you look at my other one, that's kind of what I did here. I just pinched it in the leg, but pretty much just folded it in half. So that's what we're going for. All right. Now onto the arms. So we're going to do this sword arm first. We're just going to wrap the arm, and you'll notice, see how short it is? So we don't have to do a whole lot. So I'm just going to grab some wire. It's hard to wrap the ends of the wire, so you just want a little bit extra hanging off. Like that. And again, you want to wrap just so you don't nick the head. But what we're also going to do is we're going to attempt to thin this arm in half as well. Now it's pretty thick, so we're not going to get the whole thing. So what you're going to do is you're just going to use your fingernail again, pinch it in the half point a little bit, just to kind of get that ghost crease starting, and punch your fingernail into the middle as you kind of start wrapping the paper around, and it'll start trying to obey. It's going to be a little hard. It's going be a little difficult, which is ultimately what the wire is for. But you're going to start being able to get a little bit of a bend in the arm, like this, right? The layers are going to spread out, but that's okay. You just want a little bit like that. Once you get that going, you're going to secure that with the wire. So here. And this part, since it's a lot thicker, we can tighten this pretty tight. We want this really tight, and that's going to squeeze all those layers together and make it a little bit thinner, especially when we apply our water glue mixture. Alright, so I'm just wrapping up that arm joint. And then I'm going to kind of curve it a little bit. We're going to use our other model as a reference again. Right, see how it's just curled down a little bit. So with the wire, I'm just going to kind of try to get a little bend. There you go. And that'll be our sword position. Like that. We're going to do this part separately because we're going to let this part sit on its own first. And we'll come back to this in a little bit. Alright. Now we're basically going to do the same thing for this side. This arm, again, we're going to try to fold it in half and then tie it up. So same deal. Use your thumb, ghost crease, and then kind of squish down to get the layers to kind of obey you a little bit, like that. Right. So even if it's barely curved, that's all we need because the wire will help us with the rest. So I'm going to cut another piece of wire for us, like this. And we're going to wrap around our model. So I'm going to leave a little bit more extra this time, just so it'll be a little bit easier to get a nice, super tight grip on here. I'll put it to the edge and get a real tight wrap on this arm. And again, you don't have to go around the shield yet. We're just doing the arm. Like that. There you go. And see how these are kind of guiding our head? So now our head can kind of sit on its own and it's fairly protected. You're just going to want to smooth it out a little bit. Like this. And we'll be good. Good to go. Just like that. See? Cool. Now, just like the sword, we're going to want to angle this arm a little bit. So basically, we just want it so that the shield faces in front. Excuse me. Alright. Just like this. Now definitely use the wire to help it bend. It's going to be quite hard and quite difficult with the thickness of the paper. But will kind of be something like this, as you can see. Alright. Just move the wire a little bit so we have a little bit more room for this to bend. Excellent. As you can see here, I wrapped it a little bit too close to the shield, so I'm just going to unravel one layer. Now I have a little bit more room, and it'll help me bend this shield a little bit more towards the center like we want it to. And voila. Awesome. So now we have both arms and the legs done. Now we're going to kind of head towards the shield and the sword, and then we'll get into using our little glue mixture. Alright guys, so now for the shield and the sword, we're actually not going to use our water mixture. We're going to use just our regular white glue. So have that at the ready. And basically for the shield, we just want to glue the inside of these layers here, as you can see, like that. And we're also going to glue inside that little crevice. And we're going to glue these points flat. That way the whole shield kind of just lays flat like that. We don't want it bubbling out. So I'm going to take glue like this. And I'm just going to coat the inside of these inside layers like this. And this layer. These layers over here, they're pretty tight, so I'm just going to try to get a little bit of glue in there, but those should mainly keep together themselves. And I'm also going to do the back side of him. Right, so see that? So back side of these layers. A little bit of glue. You don't have to go overkill. When we squeeze these together, if you have too much glue, it's just going to squeeze out, and it kind of leaves a mess. Don't do too much. There we go. And while we're on the back side here, I'm just going to go underneath this layer a little bit. And I'm going to coat these points a little bit. Just like that. Right, now we can kind of just push those down and they'll start sticking on their own, and we're going to squeeze this part together like that. And you can see kind of how the glue runs out if you put too much. Right, so if you have extra like that, just kind of sweep it up. That's why I have the paper towel here. Cleans up the little mess a little bit. Kind of just spread it to the rest of the paper. Alright, and then we are going to do a little bit more for the bottom. Just a tad. Like that. Alright. Just like that. Awesome. Cool. Now we're going to do a little bit for the points up here. And that's pretty much it for the shield. The layers start unsticking. You just want to squeeze them back together as it dries. And eventually, when it does dry, it'll just stay put on its own. And that's kind of what we're going for. Just going to stick this down here a little bit like that. There we go. Boom. And that's our shield. Once again, you just want to make sure it's in a kind of an arm position you want it to be in. Right, so if you're having a lot of trouble with this part, you can wrap it very carefully with wire just to kind of keep it in place. But you really don't have to. You know, if you really want it to be kind of tilted a little bit more, normally you can just get away with a little bit of glue and some stiff forcing of the paper. It'll kind of bend to your command. If not, then go ahead and wrap it up with some wire. But for now, that looks pretty good. And we'll move on to the shield, or not the shield, the sword. Right, so now for me, this head part's been drying a little bit, and it's almost nearly dry. So I'm just going to give it one last squeeze, make sure it's all in the nice area, so when it fully dries, it's going to be good, and we shouldn't have to touch it much. Great. Alright, now I'm gonna get, again, we're just gonna use some glue for the sword and just kind of glue some of the layers flat. So take this, and we're just going in between the blades here. There's all those diagonal layers. Same thing on the other side. And also right in between this middle portion of this triangle. Basically, we want that to be glued down because we don't want our sword to be like all wide open like this, like a scissor. We want it to kind of be closed up like that. So it's just kind of like two big blades. Just going to squeeze down like this with the glue to kind of hold it in place just for a little bit so it stays. There you go. Now it's a little bit more structured. I'm just going to kind of brush my glue just along this middle portion to kind of get that a little bit sticky so it stays together. Awesome. And then we're going to use a little bit of glue on the inside here, and that's just going to tighten up the hilt of our sword. Right in here. And you can put a little bit on the other side if you would like to. We're basically just going to squeeze that like that. Now if you want to, since this part's a little thicker, it might not stay like that. You can wrap it up with a little bit of wire, but for the most part it should stay. Just like that. Give it a little squeeze. There you go. And then just keep monitoring your shield and your sword as the glue dries, just to make sure it stays that way. Awesome. So I'm just gonna bring this a little bit closer here. So our sword or shield is where we want it to be. Sweet. Nice. Alright, so we have that going for us. Last thing we have to do is we kind of want this hand to be curled around the sword a little bit. So we're going to use a little bit more glue on that just to attach it kind of to the hilt. And then once we're done with that, we're going to move on. So I'm just going to dab a little bit there, a little bit on the inside. And we'll be good. There you go. I'm just going to give it a little curl like that. And we are set. Alright. It's looking pretty good. Just going to let it sit like that. And we're going to move to the next part. Alright, so now this has been sitting for a little bit. So this is pretty much all dry. Since that's all dry, we're just going to take this wire, move it a little bit higher, just so it really gets our neck of our little swordsman really tight like this. And I'm just going to finish wrapping around. And if yours had the same problem as mine where it wasn't quite all the way up, you can get another wire and just fix it a little bit around like that. Should be pretty good. That way we get this nice little tight area. And again, we're just going to use our white glue one last time. Sorry, I told you guys to put it away, but changing up the order a little bit. One last time, little dab right along that base of the neck. Like that. And if you want, you can put it on the front of the face. Again, once this dries, it just strengthens the paper. Like that. Right. Great. Cool. So, now that we have that, we are ready to kind of get shapen with that liquid mixture. So basically what we're going to use this for is we're just going to be coating the layers here, and this kind of soaks in with the glue and will allow, once it's fully dry, it'll pretty much just leave the paper standing as it is. So you don't really want to apply it onto the wire because you don't want the wire to stick into the paper, but you're going to apply it into the places around the wire. And if you can, just like kind of underneath it, but don't worry about covering on top of it. Just mostly the parts we left exposed, and that'll be enough to allow it to do what we want it to. So I'm going to start with the torso and the legs. Let's just kind of soak all around. You really want this to soak into the paper, and that's what's really going to give it the effect properly. Alright, so you can see I'm just kind of finding my way with my brush through and between these layers, around the toes a little bit, and behind. It's really getting a good coat over everything. Don't really want to miss any spots. Right, and as this gets a little bit soaked, we can hang on to the wire and just hold on to that. That way we're not putting any stress on the paper, and that way we don't have the risk of it tearing. So let's cover all the legs. This doesn't take too long, you know. You're literally just trying to cover the surface area like this. And if you see any of this glue water sitting on top of the wires, just kind of brush it off the wire. We really don't want the wire to stick a whole lot, because the more it sticks is basically when you'll get some wire bite, and we're just trying to avoid that. Alright, so this is pretty good. You can kind of test with your hand. You can kind of feel that it's kind of wet. That's all we need. It'll slowly soak into the rest of the layers. So now we can move on to the arms. I'm just going to do the arms a little bit like this. Same thing as the legs. This is pretty generic. Just make sure you get it on all sides. I'm going to flip it over. Get this back area. You don't really want to apply any more to the face because we already did that section. Just kind of avoid that. Just get the arms. There you go. And at this point, if you wanted to move the arms any more, the water will help allow you to shift the arms just a slight bit with the wire, just because it kind of softens the paper. So you just get those last minute shaping. You don't want to do it too hard because you can break the paper, but just get it right where you want to, so that when it dries, it just stays in place. There you go. Like that. So I pretty much covered the entire thing with our little mixture. As you can see, we really didn't need that much at all. So I still have a bunch left. You can save that for another project if you want, or you can just get rid of it. But alright, there we go. Just make sure our head's okay. Kind of check up on everything else. This looks good. Squeeze out a little bit more. Shield looks intact. Get a little bit of curve there. And the rest of our body is just ready to dry. If you think you missed any spots, just make sure to cover it. Awesome. Now this is ready to dry. The last thing you want to do is just let it sit. Now if it's doesn't sit properly like this, one thing I like to do is I like to take a little bit of water. Sorry, not water. A little bit of wire. And make a little hook, and I'll just try to thread it between one of these wires here. That's not touching the paper as much, so maybe here if that fits. No, that's too tight. That, or I'll just string it around one of its arms like that, and then I will attach it to something else so that I can kind of hang dry. That way, you know, there's no pressure on any of the limbs as it dries. That way, you're not going to get much warping just from it, just from gravity. So let that dry for about 12 hours. I know that seems like a lot, but we really want this to set. So once you have this, So let it dry, be a little patient, and let the results turn out. So I'm going to let this sit. We're going to come back when this is all dry, and I'll show you guys just what it looks like when you take off the wires and kind of what to do next. But I'll see you guys then in about 12 hours. Alright guys, we are back with our guy, and it's been a little longer than 12 hours, but he's perfectly dry. So as you can see, it's pretty solid. Everything we glued down pretty okay. If you see anything that came apart, you can always reapply glue and do this all over again. But now we're going to take off the wire, and sometimes the wire gets tangled up, so we kind of go in reverse order. So I'm just going to start with this arm. Pretty easy, just be careful. Normally I hold the part that's still wired as I'm undoing the wire. That way you don't really torque out the arm. If I held just like the body and I tried to take off this wire, it's going to bend kind of the whole body. Don't want that to happen. Just isolate the movement and be really careful. Now this will be different depending on how strong your wire is, but just kind of be careful. And as you can see, once we take off our wire, the arm stays put. You can kind of see some wire biting right here. Now that's okay. Obviously this is printer paper, so you know, not a lot you can do. But if you want, you can take some water, just very gently brush over this point and just squish it down, and it will fix some of that wire bite. Don't use too much water though, as it will eventually just undo all the glue we did and will make the arm loose again. But if you really don't like that look of the wire bite, you can do that. Since I'm painting over, it's not going to make a whole lot of difference, so I don't mind too much. As you can kind of see, here's the wire bite from this guy, but it really doesn't take away from the overall aesthetic. And there you go, we have our arm right there. As you can see, head's super solid now, so is the face. Just gonna buff it out a little bit. It's still one layer, so I mean, it's not, you know, invulnerable to damage. I believe this leg we did second, so let's go unravel it. There you go. And we have one more here. And just, you know, take your time. I know it's really exciting. This is always my favorite part, undoing the wire. Just to see what it looks like underneath. Alright, there we have it. As you can see, you know, this part a little bit, it's coming apart, so I might take some glue to fix that. But otherwise, it's looking pretty good. It's exactly what we want. We got our sword, we got our shield, and even though we don't have it painted, it's pretty nice. So this is the completed model. If you want to tweak yours any more, you can. But the last thing I kind of like to do, besides painting, is make a little stand for it. So I kind of just have this canvas block. You can use wood or whatever, just any form of block, and simply you can use the same wire you use to wrap your model. And I just poked the hole in the bottom and taped like that to keep it still. This is pretty janky, but you know, you can kind of just stand up your model against it like that. It'll mostly stay up. Let's see if it works for this one. They're about the same size. Might be a little taller. And you have your little stand. Now, as you can see from this mark, I also super glued the foot of this to the bottom before. That works as well, but you know, if you don't want to super glue it, you don't have to. Or hot glue it. I think I hot glued it. I didn't super glue it. But yeah, so that's it for the model. I'm going to go paint this one really quick. I'm not really going to show that because literally you're just painting it. But yeah, great job everyone for making it through the tutorial, and I hope this is something easy you can make that doesn't take a whole lot of time, besides just waiting for it to dry. But yeah, I think this is pretty easy. The longest part's going to be folding that grid. Leave me a comment to see, if you have any questions or how you enjoyed folding the model. Send me your guys' pictures. You can send it to me on Instagram, Reddit, pretty much any social media if you find me. I'd love to see, the different creativity you guys come up with, different paint styles. I feel like you could do something cool with the shield. But yeah, have fun with this model. Pretty easy. Thanks for watching, and I'll be posting some more videos out soon. So enjoy some little demo reels of this model, and stay tuned for more. Thanks.
Second guess a thing.